G'day, welcome to Deeper Meaningfuls with Furzey. On this episode, my guest is Mr. Kerry Jacobson. Now, Kerry's a bit of a drumming legend from the glory days of Aussie and Kiwi rock. Now, if you don't know his name, you definitely know his grooves because he was in the band Dragon in their heyday. He played drums on April Sun in Cuba, Are You Old Enough, Rain, all the bangers. That's Kerry. We had a great chat. Some of the things that we talk about are the telegram that he received inviting him to join Dragon, his secrets to setting that groove for April Sun, the time that Dragon played in Texas, got pelted with bottles and nearly shot, how he managed to overcome a heroin addiction and come back even stronger, and a lot more. I know Kerry really well because I have the privilege of singing in a band with him, the Filthy Animals. Kerry is the founding member. If you enjoy the pod, please do me a favour, share it with your mates, leave me a rating and review. Really helps me out. Now, here is my good friend, Kerry Jacobson.
Are we recording?
Yeah. There's did you want to do a ritual beforehand? Is there any prayers or anything you wanted to say?
No.
This could be the last conversation that we ever have before we get cancelled, you know? Yeah, I think when you deal with creative people, they're all ends of the spectrum, huh? You know?
Oh, totally. That's what Sharon's dealing with. That's what she finds so hard with this band.
Yes.
There's so many of us.
Yes.
And so many personalities.
She's hard. She's a hard one to get a trick by. Our Sharon.
No, don't even try.
I'm still working on it. I'm gonna figure it out at some point. Yeah, creative people in general are. Like I remember when I lived in LA, it's just so many creative people, you know, musicians and actors and
all trying to do something big. Yeah.
And there's that inherent need for the whole look at me kind of thing, which is just so strong in creative people in general. But then there's also that like, don't judge me, you know, look at me, but don't judge. Don't tell me how you really feel about the thing because I'm too fragile to handle a true response. And
I know, exactly.
It's such a volatile way of existing, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been doing Filthy Animals for how long now?
We or me?
You. I've been doing it for a year and a half.
I reckon 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
How did you guys start? You started doing that during COVID, right?
Yes. So we were all locked down.
Yeah.
In fact, what happened, I think it was January, I went to the last Chisel tour.
Yeah.
That was the last time they toured at Sirime. And after that, lockdown. So they only just got the tail end of that tour in, and then I thought, okay, what am I going to do now? So no one could travel interstate. I couldn't play with Ian anymore.
Yeah,
and
it just killed the music first, right? We were like one of the first things to just be like, nah, that's dead, and the last thing to come back.
Yeah, it was terrible. Anyway, it was Sharon's idea. And she manages the band now, of course. She said, why don't you get a cover band together with some, do you know any musicians up here in Brisbane? Which I did. I knew Brett Williams from the Choir Boys. And she said, okay, so why don't you try and get a band together with people from well-known bands because none of them can tour. Okay, who else do I know? And it kind of went on like that. We got in touch with OJ.
How do you know Brett?
I knew Brett because when I was working at the school I was teaching at, I was putting on performances there every year and getting the bands in that I was working in at the time or had worked in to perform in front of the parents and the kids and do workshops and things like that. And that was really successful. So I did Dragon first with two drummers. Which is interesting.
Wow.
No, actually, I did Ian first.
Okay.
Then I did Dragon. Then I did. I was doing a tour with the Sorrows, so I got the Sorrows in. Mm-hmm. And then I got Leo Sayer in because I knew him from. Yeah, well, he lives here, I think, but he was here at the time. And then, of course, the last one I did was the Choir Boys. I was going to do Mondo Rock, and then COVID happened, so that fell through. But and that's how I met Brett, and I played in the Choir Boys at that gig. So anyway, cool. That's how it kind of came about. Then we found OJ from who on bass, who
John
lived
Butler.
From John Butler, and Glenn, who we weren't sure where he was from. Yeah. We're still not. But
neither's he.
Sorry, Glenn. But
he's from the depths of hell, our Glenn.
Yeah, I think he made a couple of bands up. It didn't matter. But anyway, he'd understand. That's a joke. And anyway, we got it together, and we did a couple of shows. And Sharon said, "Well, look, you get the band together and have a little rehearsal, and I'll just do the admin. I'll make a few phone calls and you know how it's ended up."
Yeah, and you would have been like, "Yes, I don't have to do the worst part of this whole thing.
Yeah,
Sharon can do it."
Anyway, it became this monster, and she's trying to deal with that now. But the great thing about it all as well is that she comes from a media background, and she ended up designing all the the logo and all the social media stuff, and of course, as you know and agree, it's all pretty cool.
Yeah, dude.
So
that's something that's so. Well, that's something I wanted to talk to you about, because you've been in this industry for a long time now, and it's changed so drastically in front of my eyes, and you must have seen it just come to a place where it is a completely foreign thing, like from when you started playing drums and playing music and were in bands that were doing well, to how the machine worked, to the way it is now and the way people consume music. And I mean,
it's a different world.
It's a completely different world, and the industry in itself still doesn't really know how it works.
Yeah, I think there are two major things that happened, and I think late 70s and through the 80s was a fantastic period in Australian music. Bands could work all the time, even the lower level bands in RSL clubs and things like that. What happened first was poker machines. Oh. When they came in, bands started to be kind of left out because they didn't need to pay for them. They were getting income from the clubs, were getting income from the poker machines.
So when did that happen? Do you remember that?
I reckon it was early 80s that started to happen. I could be wrong, might even be late 70s.
And so before that, the reason people went to bars and pubs was to see a band, hang out with each other, have some drinks, and be entertained by a band.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And in Sydney, where I lived at the time, when I was with Dragon, you could go pretty much on any night of the week to any pub and see a band.
And there was music.
And it would often be an up-and-coming band, like Rose Tattoo or The Angels or something like that, honestly.
Yeah.
And there were just gigs everywhere.
Yeah.
And even bands could work all the time. Even Dragon, back in those days, late 70s, for example, flying was very expensive. So we'd drive everywhere. So you'd do an overnighter to Melbourne from Sydney. So 6 of us in the Chrysler Valiant.
And that's no joke. And that drives 10 hours.
And then we'd do a lunchtime concert in a school. Then we'd do an 8 p.m. pub. And then we'd do a 2 a.m. nightclub. You do 2-3 gigs a day, easy. That's what it was like. And unbelievable. Then I think the second thing that happened was Spotify.
Yeah, streaming.
Once that happened, record companies, see, back in those earlier times, I sound like a caveman now, but there were record companies and there were A&R people, artist and relations guys that would go out and check out bands, and they'd sign them up and all of that sort of thing. So what would happen is a band would be noticed at a venue. Then the A&R guy would go back to the record company execs and say, I think we should sign these guys up. So you'd get signed up, you'd get an advance to record your album, and then the advance would be recouped off album sales. And that's how it worked. So everyone was recording.
And that loop
gigging
closed itself. They would give you the money. You would earn the money back by selling the album, which you could do. And then you could do the next one.
Yeah. And it was a physical thing. People would go out and they'd buy a record. And then it became CDs, and, it was all pretty much the same. But then I think once streaming came in, and not just Spotify, but I think that's, from what I believe, it's kind of killed the whole record company thing.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone knows you don't make much from Spotify.
Well, Spotify,
if you're an artist.
Yeah, Spotify's ethos, which was bullshit, was that they were going to fix the problem that I can't remember the name for it now, the torrents. So the downloading torrents, which was just illegal versions of streaming, they were going to fix that. So into streaming. So you would download an MP3 off like the peer. I used to do it as a young bloke. I would go, you could log onto this thing and you could find the song, and there'd be all these other people that were seeding, which was just people on their computers that were uploading the stuff that they had, and I could download it from them. Yeah. And that was just crushing the industry. And Spotify was like, oh, we're going to fix it. We're going to make streaming, and we're going to pay the artists and stuff. Yeah. They technically do, but they don't pay anything remotely close to a person being able to make a living out of.
You have to be selling millions.
And even then,
not selling streaming.
I think something like 1 million streams is not even $1,000.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Which is not. It hasn't. I mean, I use Spotify because it's awfully convenient. Yeah, and as a listener, but I also upload music to it, and it gives me nothing. Yeah, I know. It barely gives Lady Gaga anything, you know. It didn't fix that.
Yeah, but anyway. They're the two things that I think have kind of changed. I mean, there are probably other things, technology as well. You know, now you're able to pretty much record at home. So studios kind of started going out of business as well. They're still around. The good ones are still around, but and I think that's what's changed. Yeah, and I think also technology has changed the way songs are written as well. You know,
man, it's getting so scary. My wife showed me something yesterday. It was an ad for an AI plug-in app, which it creates voices.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, and it's completely AI. I don't know what you do or what prompts you put in or what buttons you click, but it was a female voice singing a phrase, and maybe you type in what you wanted to sing, and it was beautiful, and it made me really sad because I was like, wow, we're almost completely gone now. As far as you don't even need a person to create something that, because the thing about a lot of that AI stuff is up until recently you've been able to tell. Yeah. Like you hear an AI voiceover and you go, yeah, that's a machine. But now it's getting to the point where it's like you don't even know.
I know. Yeah.
But I think the one thing that is our saving grace as performers and musicians who are, you know, human beings who go out and do our best to actually play a song is that there's a connection there that I don't think machines will ever be able to replace. And
of course.
And that thing that we feel when even in the rehearsal room when we're jamming a song and it's really cooking, there's an energy there that's really special and really fulfilling. And then when you bring that to a stage and you get a bunch of people that come, you can't replicate. That's why theatre is still alive. Look at you compare theatre to like a movie like Transformers, you go, how on earth are people still going to theatre? We got robots, flying through space. Your cars turning into machines and into people. This is amazing. Look at this, but it's not real, and we know that we don't have the same connection to people dressing up as a cat and wearing makeup and twirling about, and people are just raving about it and loving it. It's that human connection thing that I'm holding on to for dear life, man. That's the only thing we've got left.
Yeah. I thought about an interesting point. Well, I just happened to think about this, and I don't know if it's true, but if you think about it, if you think about songwriting nowadays, you know, I don't listen to the radio anymore, but if you do, it's pretty boring. It's like in terms of songs that you listen to or that they're playing.
It's become a formula.
And I just think that probably everything's been done. And that's why when you go back to the 80s to when songs had chord changes and bridges and melodies, why I think a lot of people are going back to that. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know if I'm right, and maybe that's why we see so many tribute bands and cover bands around now. because they seem to be everywhere.
Yes, playing. So, well, I think that's because of two things. I don't think it's because everything's been done. I think it's because from my time when I was living in LA, a really good mate of mine he got quite successful as a producer and songwriter. And so I kind of got a peek into how the process works for pop music, at least. And he had some songs with Demi Lovato and with Justin Bieber. So these are, top tier artists. And basically it's just turned into a factory. You look at, let's compare an artist like Queen, where you've got this eccentric singer with this band of very able musicians who are just exploring and doing crazy shit because they want to. And it was magic, and it was weird, and it was like, do I hate this? Do I love this? What's going on? And it changed music. It was iconic songs to now, where it's become a factory where the process would be, my mate would say, I've got a session today where top line writers, which is just people who write melody and lyrics, would come into his home studio and they'd sit there and they'd cook up a pop song. Yeah, and it wasn't coming from the heart. It was coming from the place of, this is my job, and we know what parameters we need to stay within for this song to get picked up by maybe Demi Lovato.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely a factory.
Yeah. And they go, as a musician, there would be times when he'd be like, as a musician, I want to make this choice because it's cool and it's interesting, but I can't because the chances of me getting paid for that are very, very low. So it's become this like watered down vanilla thing that is got the most chance of success or of some success for these, as you were saying, the record companies that do exist and the labels that do exist.
Yeah, that is a good point.
They just want to go, what do we need to do to make sure we make money? We can't, it's not big risks. Yeah,
for sure. There is that element as well. But I don't know, it's just so different now.
It's so different.
And I mean, for me, being a little older and having lived through those prime times, I mean, even when I was teaching a few years ago and a lot of my older students, year 10s, 11s and 12s, and even my kids, were going back to listening to older music, because they could hear songs. And lyrics.
You could, and I think that you inherently can tell, they can feel that it's more authentic, that there's more of a connection to the music from the person creating the music rather than just cooking up something and serving it out to whoever will take it. And again, come back to like Freddie Mercury, that kind of stuff is so weird, but that's what's so cool about it.
Yeah.
And it's like these days I try to listen to the radio and whatever's popular sometimes because I do these acoustic cover gigs and I do wedding gigs.
You want to hear what's current.
Yeah, I want to hear what's cooking. What do people love? And it's honestly, it feels like you could just insert artist name here with all these songs.
Yeah,
there's a few subgenres, but it could be, if it's some pop starlet, it could be any one of 6 or 7, and then it rotates to a different number of 6 or 7 as time goes on, and they have their shelf life, and then they're done. But it's all, there's nothing, you listen to Cold Chisel and it's Cold Chisel. You know that's Jimmy Barnes. Like you know that's Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a couple of artists these days that have got, like Adele, she's actually unique.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and I'm not saying they don't exist anymore. But
barely.
But yeah.
Definitely in the mainstream.
You've really got to search.
You've really got to hunt for them. And that is cool. They definitely exist, but they're not, it's not trendy. It's not what's cool. Whereas, there's a different time when it was like, oh, this is different and interesting. People will want to hear this.
Yeah.
Different and interesting has no place on the radio today. Well, the radio's almost dead as well.
True.
That's something that's fascinating. That's a dying medium too. Why would you sit there and listen to all these friggin' ads?
Well, I'm sure most people nowadays, including myself, I don't turn the car radio on.
No.
I plug my phone in and listen to Spotify.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, I'm one who has Spotify only because I find it easy because I have to learn a lot of songs.
Yeah.
And it's just really easy.
And
because they're always there.
Yeah. That's it. Why? I mean, the alternative is just stupid. We don't ride a horse to work anymore. It's like, I know it's better for the environment, but I can't do it.
Yeah. Can I still play my CDs? Yeah.
Someone gave me a CD the other day. Actually, Randall gave me a CD.
Oh, one of his.
One of his. And I was like, awesome, man. I'm pumped to hear this. And then I put it in I was like, I don't have a CD player. Yeah. It was sitting in my car, and then I went, I've got one in my car because I got an older car.
Right.
It didn't work. So I couldn't listen to his music. I was like, hey, bro, you got any MP3s? Because I don't own a CD player that functions these days. My
Blu-ray players, I think you can.
Does it work on Blu-rays?
Yeah.
I don't have a Blu-ray player.
Yeah, they do.
It's all streaming now too.
I know. Well, see, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the thing. Yeah, interesting thing about record companies back in the day, and it might still happen. I knew of quite a few instances where a band would get signed because they were a little bit similar to this band that they'd already signed.
And they put them on the shelf.
And then they'd put them on the shelf and just do nothing with them just to get rid of them.
That's so dark, isn't it? That's awful. And then this young, hungry band would be like, yes, it's happening. And not only to realise that, oh no, we've just been captured.
Yeah.
We're prisoners.
And there's all that other stuff too, like because, let's face it, record companies weren't angels either, even though the industry was far, far better then. I've heard stories where, in fact, my son was telling me only yesterday, there's a band he really likes from the US that he's going to go and see. They're touring soon out here. And apparently the singer, when he was 18, was in another band trying to make it, writing songs, and they got this manager on board who said, well, you have to sign half your royalties for your songwriting. To me, that's the norm. And of course, when you're a kid, you don't know any better.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
He took his songwriting.
Yeah.
The one thing that they usually can't get.
And then I have to have producer fees as well.
What a snake.
Producer. And you go.
This is recently.
This was when he was younger. Yeah. But those sorts of things used to happen all the time. Probably still do. I don't know. But yeah. So there's good and bad always.
Oh, there's heaps of it. You hear about it all the time. It is an interesting,
and probably in any business, not just the music business.
Yes, but I think that it's potentially easier to take advantage of creative people like that, because creative folks. I mean, I know personally, I've had to get better at it, but I'm really good at moving laterally and coming up with ideas, and not really good at following through with one till it finishes.
Right.
And if you have someone that is kind of the opposite, who can go, hey, look, I can help you take this thing across the line. I don't have a creative bone in my body. I don't make things up, but I can help you see it through. Oh, these creative people are like, oh, thank God, this person's going to help me do this. I can just worry about being creative and not worry about the admin and the nuts and bolts kind of thing. And
there's an old saying that you have to invest a little bit of money to make money as well, but then you've got to pick the right person.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah.
So when did you've always been a drummer? Did you play other things?
I started when I was very little on piano. Yeah. My dad was a cocktail pianist, if you like, a jazz pianist.
Yeah.
And my mum was actually a singer when they met. But then when I was about probably 10, 11, I really took an interest in drums.
Drums is fun, man.
And it was mainly because my dad's trio used to practice in the lounge room on the weekends. Yeah. And the drummer had come along with a snare, with his little kit. And I remember one time, I used to sit and watch, and I remember one time he handed me a pair of brushes and he said, take these. And he set up a stool with a piece of brown paper on it. And he said, just do this. And I started playing along.
Yeah.
Like that. And of course, that's all I've ever done.
Yeah.
I got the bug. And I remember shortly after that I saw Gene Krupa, famous jazz drummer. Okay. Probably black and white TV, playing on TV, and he was probably one of the first showman drummers.
Oh, wow.
And I want to do that.
This is cool.
Much to my father's horror. No, you've got to take over my stationery business and blah, blah, blah. And, no, I want to be a drummer. And
Yes.
I remember I used to be practicing later on when I was probably early teens. I'd be practicing in the lounge room to records.
Yeah.
And I'd watch my dad drive past with the lawnmower out the front, giving me filthy looks. But I didn't give up. That's what I wanted to do.
So were you playing a lot of jazz as a kid?
Yeah. That's how I started.
When did you decide you wanted something a bit meatier and wanted to play rock and roll?
Well, it was a funny thing. So I played in my uncle's band for a little while, just doing weddings, parties, anything. And that was my dad's brother. He was a pianist as well.
Yeah.
And this would have been early 70s. And I think we used to do gigs up at the university in Wellington, and we'd be downstairs and I'd be, playing along, and I'd be watching, because it was the hippie era, kind of post-hippie.
Yeah, that was an incredible
upstairs
era.
Was always a hippie band, a rock band of some sort. You'd always see everyone stoned coming out and walking past these big windows looking at us and kind of, doing all that. I'd say, hey, Jan, all that stuff. So I thought,
maybe I need to hang with the cool kids.
Yeah, I've got to get the hang of that. Anyway, what happened was there used to be a musicians club in Wellington. Don't remember exactly where it was, but it was upstairs. And I used to go there, and that's where I met this bass player who was in a band called Mammal.
Oh, yeah, there's a current band called Mammal, which is probably quite different.
This was the New Zealand Mammal.
Okay.
And at that time, Dragon had formed as well, and in New Zealand, we're just the Hunter Brothers, different lineup than the the classic, I suppose, if you like. Anyway, I'd in those days, everyone was encouraged to get up and jam, so I'd get up and play a few numbers, and they were a little bit rocky, and I had a bit of an idea. It was just 1, 2, 3, 4.
Sure. Yeah, if you can play jazz, you can play rock. Yeah.
Anyway, so Mark Hornibrook, the bass player, noticed me and anyway said, hey, do you want to join this band? We're looking for a drummer, who incidentally Robert Taylor was in, or which incidentally Robert Taylor was in. Guitar player from Dragon. Not at that point.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll give it a go. I think I was about 18.
Okay. Yeah, wow.
Anyway, and they were playing covers, some originals, but very much soul music. A lot of Gladys Knight and the Pips, Temptations, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So funky stuff. So I kind of, and at that point I started hanging out with a lot of Maori musicians, and I was going to their houses on the weekends or in the afternoon, and it was always a family kind of atmosphere. The grandma would be there, and the grandkids, and everyone in the family would live in this house.
And
they'd be jamming all the time.
It's beautiful.
And so I used to go and watch these Maori bands, and I just used to notice the pocket that those drummers would get into, just the way they hit their snares and just the funk. It wasn't even funk. They just had these grooves, going on. And so it was a real educational period for me. So that's how I kind of transitioned from jazz and into, I suppose, jazz rock first, which was Chicago and Blood, Sweat and Tears and bands like that, and then into the whole soul thing. Yeah. And Mark Hornibrook, the bass player, kind of taught me a lot about pocket and how to play, what to leave out.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that interesting?
More so than what to put in.
How much that makes a difference.
Yeah, and of course when you're that age, you want to overplay all the time,
Look at all the things I can do.
Yeah. Oh, I did this bit today. Can I put that bit in there?
Yes.
It didn't really work. But
yeah.
So that whole thing was really educational, like I said, for me. And then, of course, it was quite funny because Mammal and Dragon used to drive around the country doing gigs in these old buses.
That's a real zoo of a tour, isn't it?
Yeah. They were all painted psychedelic colours.
Cool.
And the driver would sit in this cab, just this cabin, and then you'd have the bonnet over there, and then the rest of the bus. We had a table then bunks, and then all the gear was in the back. It was great. And we were young, and we roughed it, and we didn't get paid, but we didn't give a shit.
Yeah, wow. So you're like, what, 18, 19?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we used to pass each other on the highway, if you're looking out the window.
So you joined Dragon And that you were in Dragon at like 19, 18?
No. I'm still in Mammal.
Oh, this is Dragon. Sorry.
Yeah. They're doing their thing, we're doing their. We used to pass each other on the highway.
Sure, yeah.
And they're going to a gig and we're going to a gig.
Yeah. And this is in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Did you grow up in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Born, bred, and grew up. Anyway.
Yeah.
So in the end, Mammal break up.
Yeah.
And Robert joins Dragon.
Okay.
And I joined a little cover band in Wellington, playing at a club called Uncle Albert's Attic, and playing Earth, Wind and Fire and all those sort of, because funk and disco.
Yeah, man. I love that stuff.
Right? So we're talking 74, 75.
Yeah. And it's funny how that music became what dance music is now. But like that was like 7, 8, 9 people in the band just playing a groove for 12 minutes, because people just wanted to dance,
And real musicians.
Oh, man. And the stamina.
Funky bass and just straight ahead drums.
Yeah, and having to keep
There's an
those
interesting
grooves.
story about April Sun and Cuba. I'll tell you later if you remember.
Yeah.
To remind me.
Yeah, man.
But I'll just continue with this one because what happened then, so I'm in this little band and Dragon are over in Australia and they were here for about 12 months and they just recorded this time their first kind of crack at a big single and their drummer passed away. It's an accidental drug overdose. Sadly, he was only 23. I think he was only, and I was 23 at the time.
Okay.
Anyway, of course, I knew Robert and I did know, I'd met the Hunter Brothers and the band here and there. So I got a telegram in the mail that said fame and fortune awaits. And it had
Is that what he wrote on it?
Yeah. And it had an air ticket.
Oh, wow.
And so I packed up my Ludwig kit and came to Sydney. And that's how it happened.
Wow.
And they'd already written most of the Sunshine album.
Oh, okay. So they were cooking. They were really.
No, they were, but they were still earning nothing. Still hadn't been signed to a record company.
Okay.
Still doing gigs and getting paid with a big white paper wrap with mints inside, so they could live for the week.
They could eat.
Yeah, so they could eat. It was funny times. But anyway, so we rehearsed, and then of course. The record company noticed us.
Yeah.
We just signed a new manager, which was Sebastian Chase, and he took us to the top. We got the record deal with CBS. We got the money to record the album, and then of course
what year are we here?
76.
76. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's what a. That's such a cool story, that life-changing moment of getting a telegram that is literally like, here's a gift.
Yeah.
And you're just like, whoa. It's like, I mean, golden light came out of the thing as you open up. Oh, it's time to go. Here we go.
I can't remember how I felt, but I felt I just had to go.
Yeah. I mean,
I can't remember it's too long ago.
And how attached were you to anything at 23?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Had no girlfriend, had no real attachment to my parents, that's another story. But I just came, and interestingly,
kind of what you're waiting for at that point in your life, you're ready for adventure, and then adventure it presents itself.
Sorry,
in front
Dad,
of
I'm
you.
not going to sell stationery.
Yeah,
I'm going to Australia.
I'm going to be going. Fame and fortune has called me, Dad.
Fame and
literally,
awaits. I know. Yeah. I wish I still had it, but
that'd be amazing.
Yeah. Anyway,
wow.
That's the story. So then, kind of went from there. And
okay, so it's late 70s, and so you kind of got in as it was taken up.
Well, not exactly, because it still took a little while. I think when I arrived, they were living in a like a boarding house in Edgecliff. I think the building's still there. If you go up, do you know Sydney well?
Yeah.
So if you go, where the cross is, and you're going up Oxford Street and the big Coke sign, and then you go over the hill and down and then back up, and that's Edgecliff.
Yep.
And right on the corner there, I think it was the Edgecliff Post Office or something. Right there, that was a boarding house above. there.
Okay.
They were living there, and there was Paul Hewson with his wife at the time, and their daughter, I think.
Okay.
or son. I can't remember now.
How
they had
did
two
he fare?
kids. But anyway, and the rest of the band, and I was given this room with 2 single beds, which after the first night I caught crabs in. That's how filthy it was. Yeah. And this is interesting. What's going on down there?
Yeah. Wow.
And of course, I'm 23,
welcome to
nothing.
the band. Yeah. Thanks for the gift, guys.
I don't think I was even getting paid. I mean,
You're getting paid in crabs
and mincemeat.
Mincemeat. Yeah.
Yeah. We were playing gigs like Checkers, the Oceanic Hotel in Bondi.
Okay.
Anyone listening to this would would remember that period, would know those venues. But once the album was recorded, of course, it started to take off, and we started to get better gigs, started to tour, and of course then it went ballistic.
Yeah.
Second album was Running Free, which Peter Dawkins, the producer, wanted to call Serious Moon or something, because the first album was called Sunshine, and I was the one that said, no, that sucks. Let's call it Running Free, which is one of the tracks on the album.
Yeah.
And they did.
Good on you.
But let me tell you the story about April Sun and Cuba, because for some reason I've just remembered that.
Yeah, hit me.
Which is unusual.
I think everyone in Australia, no matter how old you are, knows and feels that song. Like everyone knows that song. They may
not everyone, but a lot of people.
Yeah, they may not know that it's Dragon. They may not, but like as soon as that comes on, everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, because we were talking about the disco era,
Yes.
and I was, totally in that period of music. And when we recorded April Sun in Cuba, because Todd's bass part goes dun 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 dun, and a lot of drummers I hear play the bass drum the same way.
Oh, they
follow the bass,
catch the
which
bass.
is often what you do, but in this case, because
not
from
in disco.
Well, disco was, and I thought, let's make this a dance track, kind of. Let's just thump those 4 bass drum beats on the floor, and of course, that was what I did, and of course, that's why it sounds. I think it's got that push-pull movement. The groove's
different. Yes.
It's got the funky-ish bass, but it's got the straight-ahead bass drum.
Yes.
Which sits it and nails it kind of to the floor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's interesting that I've heard, there's another story that I heard Dave Grohl talking about with Nirvana when he was doing Smells Like Teen Spirit. Similar thing. He'd been listening to, and that song is such a huge grunge song, but he had been listening to a lot of the Daz Band, which again is disco, funk, and so a lot of those fills, like the start of that song, he was like, that's just a disco ripoff. He goes, I just completely ripped off disco, and he said the drummer from the Daz Band met him at a party one time. I was like, hey, you've been listening to my band, bro? He goes, I don't. He goes, don't think I don't know what you've been doing. But isn't that funny how when you mold, steal some gold from a different genre, and go, normally you'd be like, dun 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 dun, but you just go, poof, da, to just punch through it, and then it just creates a whole different feel to it. I guess that's what I think. Maybe AC/DC did so well too. Like
absolutely.
The feel was just all about
nailed it all to the floor.
Yeah, underplay. Yeah, get a groove. Yeah, Cliff can do what he needs to do, but it was all his was the opposite of overplaying. He's the master of just locking it down.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing I tried to do and what did do with April Sun is with a lot of the fills, and I'd push that first beat into the chorus. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and it would almost kind of set you up where it would push you into the chorus.
That's kind of a disco. That's a funk thing too, isn't it?
I don't know what it is, but it just felt right.
Yeah.
I never play anything. How can I put this? What I play is always from feel and what feels right, and so it's never preconceived.
Okay, you don't have a formula of what you're trying to follow.
I never do, and I can never play anything the same way twice.
Right.
I can, like, for example, with the last album I did with Mossy, you know, we played we still play some of those tracks live, and some of the fills I'll put them in, but they might not be quite the same, or I might not do one there. You know, it just depends how I feel at the time. I've never known if that's the right thing to do or not, but that's just
that's just beautiful.
I just can't do it any other way.
There is no right thing to do. I think that's what's so cool about it. It's not a math problem. It is about, especially when you're playing live, it's about creating an experience. And if that feels right in the moment, that's cool. I think that.
Whereas other musicians can play exactly
dead on
every time, you know, because that's possibly how they've been told to do it, or how they're expected to do it, or just how they do it, you know. Yeah. But it's never been me, and I've always struggled with that, playing the same thing twice. Yeah. I'll always play the groove the same.
Sure.
But
yeah, well, that would be weird if you drop a bossa nova groove in a April Sun. You know, that would be odd.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. Depending if I speed up or play it too fast.
Yeah, well, that's
just ask Glenneth. Hey, Glenn.
Oh yeah. Speaking of playing with the formula, I heard this thing. Apparently, this is a Phil Collins trick where he had this philosophy with drum fills, where he would play a fill that is leading up to a chorus that would increase in note frequency, and then coming out of the chorus, it would decrease in note frequency. For instance, it would be like, so coming into the chorus, it would be like, da, 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 and then go into the chorus. So it's like building, and then the other way it would be like, da, 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 dum, 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 to come out. And his philosophy was that was, musically giving you the feel that it's time to calm down now, or it's time to get excited now. And it's an interesting philosophy to take in, and I don't know if it works. I've tried it in some of the original songs that I've, programmed the drums in and created, and it's an interesting way to approach it, but it's the complete opposite of what you're doing. You're like, this is what feels like it needs to be here. But he's like, no, these are the rules. Let's stick to that.
Yeah, that I don't know if I get that. And
you may even do it without even thinking.
Well, in a way, that's probably how I think too. It's like we're coming into a chorus. Now we're coming out of it. But it's always just what feels right. And what doesn't feel right to me. And sometimes I blow it. Of course, no one's perfect.
Do.
Yeah. But
I made a mistake once, but I think I got away with it. Yeah, a couple of years ago, but otherwise I've been fine. Been flawless ever since. Yeah.
Yes.
No bum notes for me.
I noticed that actually. Yeah.
These are lies. How much time have you spent scrutinising over practicing? Like, are you one of those guys who's gone, right, I need to really get this right, and did you sit in your drum studio or in your living room, wherever it was, and really have to grind over learning techniques, or did it just kind of come because you love doing it?
Well, yes and no. I spent a lot of time practicing at one point in my life, and then and working on particular things, but I certainly wasn't a 12-hour a day practicer like some people. I think I'm trying to remember the period where it was probably through the 80s that I did the most practice that I've ever done, and it was fairly regular. And it would mainly be my left hand. I wanted to build my left hand up. It was kind of lagging behind my right hand, if you know what I mean. So my right hand was able to do things that my left hand was just a little bit sluggish with.
Snare hand.
And so I was always trying to build, and probably still am, trying to build the left hand, especially the finger technique, because I don't play with a lot of arm movement. I play with wrists and fingers. Yeah. And the finger control is where you get your speed.
Sure.
And being able to do, and the left hand was lagging behind. So, long story short, it's
that's one of the things.
That's what I was working on mostly. And also I used to like through that period working on different time signatures.
Sure.
And then I went through a period in the 90s where I found this band called Porcupine Tree. Yeah. And their drummer is unbelievable. And he does a lot of stuff placing a beat where the beat is here, just putting it there and then putting it there and then putting it there. So you started at a different point in the bar, and it sounds like really weird.
Yeah,
and your brain has to really remember where one is.
Yes.
So all that stuff. So I worked a lot on that sort of thing, but of course, still went back to my jazz roots too. Just my cymbal thing, ding, dick,
maybe
ding,
that's
ding, and getting that real swing pattern.
That's why I reckon you really do play a shuffle that feels so good, because it's one of the tricks that I've done, and a good guitarist friend of mine, Trav, he would, when we were in a band together and were auditioning drummers, he was like, you know what we need to do, because we were trying to figure out what we get them to ask them to play in order to see if we want to play with them. He was like, get them to learn whatever you want them to learn, but get them to learn a shuffle, or get them to come in and play a shuffle, and that will, separate the men from the boys. And ironically, the drummer we ended up getting was a chick, Mish. She was awesome. She had such great feel. She came at it from a very kind of feminine perspective because she didn't overplay. She wasn't trying to show off too much, and she just had this beautiful feel and just did a shuffle beautifully, which I think is one of those things that is surprisingly challenging for drummers to do.
Absolutely. But it's the thing. And I guess, and I agree with you, I think it's the most important thing, and I think it's the hardest thing to get right as well. Yeah. I think the first time, I noticed it in jazz, of course, and I still listen to jazz, much to Sharon's horror. But it's the whole essence, and you can swing rock, if you know what I mean. And I think, you listen to the early ZZ Top stuff.
Loads of shuffles.
They call them Texas. Well, they used to call them Texas shuffles, where the snare drum's shuffling with the hi-hat hand.
Oh, yeah,
it's both hands shuffling, and the bass drum just on 4, or the bass drum can be going the same way too. And those guys are just, it's jazz.
Yeah, it is.
It's heavy jazz.
Yeah.
And it just feels great.
It does. It really does. It's amazing how it feels. Like Boys Are Back in Town, great example. That it's just there's a certain groove to it that is hard, that is hard not to have it kind of take over. Like I love them. I try and throw as many shuffles into our set as I can. I remember I even said it to you. I was like, I want to put a few more shuffles in, and you went, mate, it's my specialty.
I didn't say that.
You did. That's what you said.
Oh, did I? That's not like me.
I was like, great. I was like, because this is another thing. A lot of drummers can't do it. Yeah. They can't do it justice, at least.
Yeah.
So to be able to throw down some shuffles.
I find that one trick I've found as well that I started very early on, back when I was at that disco club before joining Dragon in Wellington.
Yeah.
And there was a black band touring New Zealand, and they did a gig in this club.
Yeah,
I don't think they were American.
Band.
I don't think they were famous.
Right.
I don't remember who they were. It was the singer's name anyway, female singer. But the drummer was black, and he was doing not so much the shuffle, but they were doing 16th note hi-hat thing. So to be
yeah.
And I noticed his right hand on the hi-hat doing this push-pull thing. It's very much a wrist movement.
Yeah. It's
I was
really
trying to
deeply
teach
accented.
Well, you'd accent the first beat, the second beat. So the first beat would be the shoulder of the drumstick, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Second beat would come back to the tip. So
it's almost emulating a shaker or a tambourine,
So you get a rhythm out of it.
Yeah.
And even if you're playing eighth notes,
right. So he's literally hitting it with the bottom?
It's just a movement like this, and unless you're used to doing it, it's really hard to do. I used to try and teach my students the same thing, and a lot of them would struggle with it because it does take a lot of time. And that's one thing I did a lot of work on back in the day when I saw this guy doing that. I thought, okay, and you can do it with the shuffle.
Yeah.
Or
totally.
I don't know if you can see that, but it's that.
Yes.
It's that wrist movement and finger movement, and you're getting the two sounds from the hi-hat.
Yeah.
Cha.
Yeah.
And it gives it that movement.
It's a percussive
forward. It's
thing
instead
too.
of going
Well, and I think that's probably where if you haven't done it, it's like a bass player playing with fingers or playing with a pick. These are different techniques. It's not the same thing. It's like just like guitar, doing finger style or doing with a pick.
Oh yeah.
You can't just, if you can do one, it doesn't mean you can do the other one. I guess there'd be a lot of techniques like that in drums. Like if you get into the metal world and the heavier stuff with all the double kick and the heel toe shit like that,
unbelievable. Yeah,
that's a whole different. Yeah. You can't just do that.
And
if
the
you
fitness.
And the fitness, the cardio, those blast beats.
Yeah. So that's a really big thing, I think, in terms of. And I've heard, J.R. Robinson, famous American session player, played with every Rufus and all those, Shaka Khan, all those bands. Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
He actually talks about that same technique.
Right.
And even if you're doing 16ths with two hands, it's like the left hand would be the tip and the right hand would be more chunky. So, so you're getting, like you said, that maraca kind of two tones rather than just one solid.
Yeah.
Cha-cha-cha-cha.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And it works.
Yeah, it does. It does, and it seems like it's such a subtle thing, but it's surprising how much of different it makes in the way the song makes you feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, we're on the Dragon timeline. You've done. Was that when was April Sun?
That was second album, 77.
Oh, 77. Okay, so but that's the one. So you've put that groove in there, 77, and Dragon's getting pretty big at this point.
Oh yeah, well that was our first big hit. That was it made number 2, and it couldn't knock Mull of Kintyre off the charts to become number 1 because Mull of Kintyre was a big thing Paul McCartney did.
Right,
just a dirgy thing. Mull of Kintyre. It was kind of like a traditional sounding.
Okay.
Almost Scottish or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was number 1 for something like 9 months.
Yeah, right.
And
wow.
So April Sun was number 2 and just couldn't knock that bloody thing off the charts.
Yeah, right.
But that was our first big one.
Okay. Yeah. And how I don't really know much about the history of Dragon. How did you guys do well internationally? Did you go overseas?
No, we did go overseas. We recorded our third album, would have been 78, 79, I can't quite remember, which was O Zambezi. And that had Are You Old Enough on it, which, of course, if you wrote a song like that nowadays, you'd be put in jail. But
What was the joke? We were laughing, talking about whether we were going to do that song in the Filthies, and Glenn was like, we might have to change the name to Are You Woke Enough?
Yeah.
No, we won't be doing Are You Old Enough? Yeah.
I still think we should, but anyway. So what were we talking about again?
Overseas.
Oh, that album, yeah. So we just recorded that album and Are You Old Enough was released, and then we went to the US to do our infamous, ill-fated US tour. And I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Tell me about it.
So, yeah, it's all over the internet. But
okay, I don't know the story. Tell me.
Okay, so the record company, the subsidiary to CBS was Portrait Records.
Right.
They're an American label, and they took us to the US and put us on the same tour as Johnny Winter.
Okay.
Now, you know who Johnny Winter is?
No.
Okay. So Johnny and Edgar Winter were brothers. They were the
I've heard of Edgar Winter.
Yeah, they were the what do you call them? Albino brothers.
Oh, they're albino. Yeah, I just thought
Johnny Winter was a blues guitarist.
Yes.
I think he's passed away now.
Oh, Johnny
yes,
was.
he
Right.
has.
Right.
Anyway, so they're a 3-piece blues band.
Right.
And the first gig was in Texas.
Right.
I think it was Austin, in a club there. And this was classic. Like, we're this little white blue pop band from Australia playing pop songs. And we're in the deep south of Texas playing
blues
the blues band before, and it was like the Blues Brothers.
Yeah,
like,
right.
You know,
you needed your
chicken
wire.
You needed the chicken
protection.
wire, which wasn't there. Anyway,
so you guys are fish out of water.
We came on, and we had a whole tour with them, by the way. But we came on and we started, and then Mark, in his infinite wisdom, decided to become a crucifix, go into a crucifix position, and call John Wayne a faggot. And he's like this, and suddenly beer cans. We had we had beer cans pelted at us, and we got booed, and I'm trying to hide for the cymbals, and anyway,
using your shield.
We had to run off stage.
Oh wow!
And I heard later, I think Todd told me later, many years later, that the record company, this was our first gig, were taking bets as to who of us would be shot first.
Wow!
It was that bad.
Oh wow!
But anyway, we came off, and we went to the dressing room, and I remember Mark going, "Well, that went pretty well, really, didn't it?"
Oh man!
Yeah.
So he was he pretty loose?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mark was Mark. Mark was his own entity.
Yeah.
And could do what he liked,
right.
and got away with it a lot of the time.
He was
a very smart guy. Great singer, great showman.
Yeah.
And just one of those guys. Just had just charismatic and and this big presence, big looming presence.
Was he a big guy?
Yeah, he was like 6'4" or something.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, so we did do the rest of the tour.
Oh, you stayed on.
Yeah,
wow.
We just did the rest of the tour,
and maybe less comments about John Wayne.
But of course, we were never taken up by the record company.
I can't imagine why.
No. So that was it. So it was a failure, complete failure.
Okay.
We came back home. But interestingly, we got back, we landed, and it was just before Christmas, and Are You Old Enough had just gone to number one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, of course, it went off again.
Yep.
So that's that story.
So loads of touring Australia and New Zealand?
Yes, I think so. We did New Zealand a few times. I don't remember exactly when. My memory's not great. Sorry, from that period.
Yeah. Why is that, Kerry?
Just a little bit of partying happened.
Rock and roll, baby.
Well, I did know Mark Hunter.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were interesting times, great days, and often we did gigs that weren't so good. It just depended on how Mark was. He was.
Is he a bit volatile?
He had an appetite for a lot of things.
Okay,
and he I must say he lived life to the fullest,
and
good on him. But unfortunately, in the end, it killed him.
How old was he when he passed?
Well, it would have been 98, 99 maybe. He would have been, he was about my age. So what's that, 54? He was late 30s, early 40s, I think. Is that right?
No, 40s, almost 50, pushing 50.
Okay.
Well, yeah, 40s. Yeah.
Calculator?
Yeah. I've never been good with numbers.
No.
You can't bullshit with numbers.
Yeah. There's only so much my brain can handle at one time. We're talking about 3 different things now at one time. I can't do it.
It is because it's interesting when you hear these stories about these about rock stars and the crazy debaucherous lifestyle that goes with it.
We had that
a lot of the time. Yeah, well, because for me personally, I just know that I just can't sing if I talk over people for 20 minutes in a bar, even without alcohol or forget about anything else. I just can't sing the next day. Like or maybe the next day, but not the one after that. Like I'm done. So maybe my voice is just more fragile. Maybe I'm just not using it right, or I don't know what it is. But for me personally, when I hear stories about people like Barnsey or Axl Rose or Mark and you guys just really going crazy and partying, and then doing like 3 gigs a day, man, I just cannot. I personally cannot do that. I physically can't get away with doing it. But you guys were into it, right?
Well, I think too, remember most of the bands that were doing that were in their 20s.
Sure.
At that time,
you can bounce back a lot
and when you're
more.
that young, you kind of don't think about it. You're having so much fun.
Yeah.
You live in the life, and you're playing gigs.
Yeah.
And
you do a shit gig, doesn't matter. We're onto something else tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether it was more the fact that we were young, youth,
Sure.
I don't know, but yeah. It's I couldn't do it now as a drummer. 3 gigs a day, Jesus.
Yeah.
I can do 1.
Yeah.
Easy now, but 3. No.
Yeah. And then how many on the trot?
Yeah.
Can you get away with it before you start to gas out?
It's more about the after effect.
Yeah.
You get tired.
Yeah.
And your body feels it when you get a bit older.
Oh man, like I get a hangover these days, and I'm it's like I've got the flu.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm in the bath, and like I can't be taking phone calls. I'm
ambulance
on standby.
Yeah.
I can't handle it. Yeah, it's that whole sex, drugs, rock and roll thing. It's almost impossible to resist at that age too, isn't it? Like, why would you?
Well, I think in those days, I don't know. I don't know if it was just me or whether it just seemed to be around and everyone did it.
Yeah, right.
I don't think it happens like that anymore. I don't know about the young bands, what happens with them nowadays. I don't think it's the same. No. I think kids are probably more sensible. A lot of them nowadays.
I think people know more. I think kids
Well, the thing is
more.
now there's so many rules, and back in those days,
there's more consequences these days. Yeah,
you didn't. You could sneak into a pub at 12, 13, 14 and watch a band. Well, that's how we used to learn how to play. We'd be up there watching the drummer. Oh, look at that wrist movement that black guy's playing.
Yeah,
all that sort of stuff. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have computers.
Yeah, didn't have seatbelts.
I know. Yeah.
It was
bench seats in the front of the Chrysler Valiant.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good point. Everything was just far less regulated. Everything.
Yeah.
And so it probably didn't seem as taboo. It probably didn't seem just anywhere near as like you were doing something terrible. Especially if everyone was doing it and it was more available. It's not so. For you, from your experience, were you kind of just going along with the ride of what everyone was doing?
I think for me, I might have been different in that I really enjoyed the looseness of it all, and that I really enjoyed the part. I had a pretty unsocial upbringing, I suppose. I was kind of. Through school, I was kind of, I didn't have a lot of friends because, all the boys were into footy and, I wasn't really into that. I was into music. And so I was kind of always an outsider. And I'm sure a lot of musicians would say the same thing.
I was the same.
Had the same upbringing as, because they were into music, they were a little bit different, especially in those days.
Yeah, you find your group of people who are your people and you're like, oh, cool, I can be myself and just let loose.
So I was a bit of a loner, I think. And so when I got in, and particularly Dragon, it just opened this big public door for me. Suddenly people were coming up and wanting autographs and girls and wanting to hug you, and it was all this. It was like I'd never had that before. Yeah, and so it was
as
almost
a young lad trying to
it was
navigate.
Almost like I like this.
Yeah, all these delicious carrots being dangled in front of you.
Exactly, thousands of them
all the time. Yeah, wow.
So it was.
So you indulged,
but I don't think. I think. It affected me like that because of what I grew up as well, what I came through school as. And so that was what suddenly, I missed out on all that.
Sure.
I might grab that, whereas probably a lot of people wouldn't go that way. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't think everyone went the way I did.
Okay. There's that.
Well, definitely. That's why they're still alive.
Well, you're still kicking, so you managed to dodge it somehow.
Yeah, I was lucky.
Did you ever see that movie Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg was the lead in it? It's about this guy who it's essentially about what happened with the Judas Priest.
Okay.
Where I don't think I've seen It's a fictional version of what happened there. So what happened was they had a falling out with Rob Halford, the singer. The band was massive. It didn't work with the singer. They found a guy who was in a tribute band for Judas Priest, and he joined the band.
Yeah.
So this dude who went from just being a tribute singer became the lead singer in like one of the biggest heavy metal bands of all time.
Yeah.
And so this movie Rockstar is based on a fictional version of that. They don't talk about Judas Priest, but this guy goes from being in a tribute band to being the singer in this massive band. And there's a scene where the drummer is on dialysis, and the drummer's actually played by Jason Bonham, so John Bonham's son. Yeah. He's on dialysis, and the new singer, Mark Wahlberg's character, comes in, and he's kind of like, "Wow, what's going on?" And they're at the back of a stadium too, and he's just getting a little top up, and basically he's concerned for his safety, for the drummer's safety. But the drummer says to him, he says like, "Man, this is your duty to do this, to party, and to you're in a position where that most people would kill for this. You have an obligation to live this to the fullest." And man, I was thinking like, that's what you were doing. Like that's where you were. Like how many people have the opportunity to be like, I am the drummer and in a massive band in my country, and I have the opportunity to go and live it up. I don't there's few who would turn that down.
Yeah.
So I completely get it. And it's like such a tempting thing. And the fact that you actually made it out alive is amazing.
Yes.
Because as you say, a bunch didn't, right?
Yeah. And a bunch even now are still paying for it, you know, that, with health issues or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I remember I left the band in 1983 after recording Rain, the Body and the Beat album. Didn't finish that album. They got someone else in to finish the album. Then they, of course, Tommy Emmanuel joined the band, and then they went off and did another stint before finally, you know, Mark kind of passed away, and that was that. But if I hadn't left when I did, I don't think I'd be here now.
Oh, really? Why did you leave? Was that your choice? Was that
Yeah, it was my choice. Yeah. And I mean, I think the other thing too, I was like I said earlier, we were working all the time.
Sure.
And I was exhausted.
Yeah.
And I think also one thing I've always tried to do is probably up until now, because things are slowing down a bit now, but I always tried to, involve myself in different areas of music, in different styles. Sure. So after I left Dragon, I wanted to play sessions. I wanted to be a session drummer. And I did that for a while. I played on Mark Hunter's second solo album, actually, Big City Talk. Played on a Richard Clapton album, Dark Spaces, I think it was called. Then I started joining other bands. I joined Kevin Borich Express, and and then when I moved to Brisbane, I wanted to teach myself how to read music, and so I did that. And then I got into a theatre production up here. I did The Boy from Oz for a few weeks, filled in for the drummer there, and reading charts and just because it was different. Then I did another thing at the Tivoli when that was a theatre restaurant. And that was just prior to joining. I finished that. I think that was a year-long, back in the early 90s, a year-long production. And then I ended up getting involved with Mossy and went to Germany with him. And then, of course, I've been with him ever since, really.
Yeah.
I always tried to do different things. Got back into the jazz thing again for a little while in Brisbane. But I think
you're ready for different flavours of music.
Yeah, I think, and that's why I left Dragon because I'd had enough. It was getting too much, but I wanted to involve myself in different styles and go, almost go back to my roots. Bit of jazz here, bit of swing, bit of different styles.
How were things within the band? Because I know that
Dragon.
Yeah, just within, because you guys had spent a lot of time together, and you become, especially when you tour with the band, you become so insanely close, for better or for worse.
It's like a marriage.
It is. It's like a sexless marriage with 4 or 5 people. You know,
and I was dealing with big personalities. Yeah. Mark's personality was huge.
Yeah, that can be hard work.
And, you know, highly intelligent human being, as was Paul Hewson. You know, there were egos, and there were always arguments, and particularly between Mark and his brother Todd. It was always.
Of course, family arguments are interesting.
Family, feisty.
Yeah, and because they also, you know, they're going to make up. Yeah, but that means that the arguments can get really more heated.
Yeah. One thing that they always did as a band was at every gig, it didn't matter what went down in the day, in the car or whatever, getting to the gig, they would always stand around and play acoustic guitar and warm up vocally. So they'd do BVs, they'd sing the songs, and they'd sing together, and it would bring the whole thing back to earth. They'd always do that without fail.
Cool. No matter what.
Yeah, and I wasn't singing then, so I'd be playing on my knee with the sticks or whatever. I'd be standing there too. It would all bring us back to earth and ready for the gig.
That's cool. A nice little pre-show ritual. That's interesting. Put all the bullshit behind us. We've got a show to do.
Yeah.
That is
cool.
And
then we'd go on stage and we'd all be going, "Oh, what's Mark going to do this time?"
It sounds like he was just a loose cannon.
Oh, he
man.
was. Yeah. Wow. You never knew.
Did you guys ever get any punch-ups?
Not on. You mean the band?
Yeah.
No.
Right. What about with the band with others?
With public.
Yeah, like trying to protect Mark from being.
I don't recall anything. Possibly. Okay. Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I remember after some gigs, or after a gig in Sydney, Mark and I decided to go out to the Mansell Room, which was the famous club down through the cross there. Okay. And we'd be walking, I think we got a falafel or something to eat on the way, and we're walking down the main street of the cross to the Mansell Room, and people, like, there's him up here and there's me down here. Yeah. We're walking through, and people were literally dropping to the ground and bowing, like he had that that much charisma.
Wow, he was
didn't look at me, just Mark.
Hey, maybe you take some of the credit.
No.
A bit of it was there for you.
No, I think I did have a scarf on.
It's a scarf.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't remember.
Wow. How bad did it get with you with the partying stuff? Because I know you had a pretty dark time.
You got to understand, I've got an addictive nature.
Right.
So I have to be careful. I was a heroin addict for probably 8 years through Dragon, and it nearly killed me a number of times. But it's funny because I'm still here.
Yeah.
So I'm meant to be here, and I'm meant to be kicking goals and charging ahead and seeing what else I can achieve. That's how I feel anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is fascinating. That it's going into that and coming out of that is fascinating, because there's a lot of people who never do that.
No,
that really, and to be able to go like that's darker than anything I've ever experienced.
Oh, it was dark. Yeah. I ended up, I'd sold everything. I'd sold my drums, my car, just to score.
Yeah, wow.
I had nowhere to live in the end. I was in the cross with nowhere to go. I had nothing.
Wow.
I was actually on the street, and that bass player I mentioned in Wellington, Mark Hornibrook, was in Sydney at the time, and he found me, took me back to his place, kind of, where I was hanging out from coming down off smack.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up. I think my mum put me into a rehab.
Wow.
Because she was living in Gosford at the time. And that took a couple of years out of my life. But, I became sober. I messed up again, and I went to another rehab up here, and came out and been fine ever since. That was many years ago, but
yeah, it's so interesting that it's to go from you were just a guy who was playing drums, being in a band, and you guys were kicking goals, and it was awesome, and everyone was partying, and it's all good shit. And then there's obviously this timeline where a bunch of stuff happens, but here to be like, I'm on the street and I'm got nothing. It started off so innocent. Started off like we're partying, we're having a good time, and then it goes to this, oh shit, I'm almost dead. It's wow, what a journey, and then nothing. To be all the other way around, like. Well,
I had to claw my way back up too because no one had hired me.
Oh yeah.
I'm in Brisbane. That's why I started playing trad jazz again, because it's the only gig I could get.
Yeah.
In a little pub in Brisbane at the Story Bridge.
Yeah.
And then I got back with Kevin Borich, and then I got the Mossy gig. That's how that happened. And of course, kind of worked my way back up.
Good for you, man. You
had to show everyone I was fine. Yeah, but it was hard.
Dipped your toes or a little bit more into up to the neck into the depths of hell and managed to climb on out.
It was difficult. Yeah, it wasn't easy.
A couple of years ago, a friend of mine died from a heroin overdose, and he'd struggled with it a lot, and he'd been in and out of rehab like 8 or 9 times, and he seemed like he was in a really good place. Bobby knows him really well too. And he had a relapse and he died. And it was,
who was that?
His name's Luke.
Oh, I don't know him.
No, you wouldn't have known him. He was my age in Sydney, and it's just really. I'm intrigued to know what it would have taken for him to genuinely come out of it, and I'm intrigued to know what it took for you. What took
heroin it's so addictive because it's such a good drug. And that's the thing about it. And I gave up heroin and smoking cigarettes at the same time.
I mean, so you were just like, white knuckling it.
It was like,
People can give up all kinds of things, but they can't give up smoking.
I know.
People smoke their whole lives.
I know. Yeah, it's a terrible habit.
Yeah, well,
I walk past smokers now, and I just can't stand the smell.
Interesting.
It's awful.
Did you ever get hypnotised?
No.
Because apparently that's one of the things that they can do with hypnosis. With some people, they make you feel sick about it.
I've heard about it, yeah.
I had Grant Denyer on the pod, and Grant, aside from being a TV host, is really into motor racing. And he got a terrible injury in a monster truck where the suspension broke, and he just took all the weight, and it basically one of his lower vertebrae just exploded, turned to dust, and he was in absolute agony, the worst pain he's ever felt. And he could have become a paraplegic from it, but he's out the other side and he's fine. Obviously, but his recovery was horrific.
Yeah.
And he went into real depth about the opiate addiction that he'd gotten from the pain. Because he had to, it was so bad, and he had to take the stronger stuff. And then he found himself in a place where he was no longer in pain, he was healed.
But how was he healed with an exploded?
They had to do surgery.
Disc? They put
they did
plastic disc in or something.
It was his whole vertebrae that I don't know what they did, whether they fused it or what, but there was something. Or no, maybe they didn't do a surgery. They were going to do something, and then the doctor said he has more chance of walking if we don't do this and we do something less invasive. And they ended up going with that, which was more painful in the moment and for that period of time. But now he's good.
Wow,
there was less chance of the proper recovery. But
that would have been a long recovery too.
Long, man, and he was very open about him trying his best to kick this opioid habit. But he got to a point where he was healed. But his body was telling him that he was in pain, so that he would take more opiates. And the doctors, the nurses were like, "Look, man, you don't need these anymore." He's like, "But I'm in agony. What are you talking about? I'm in absolute agony." And it was purely withdrawal from these exceptionally powerful drugs. So it's something I'm exceptionally grateful for, the fact that I've never needed to or had to have. you know?
Yeah.
Because it's I hear nothing but the same stories from
you don't want to go there.
It's it is a slippery slope. And the fact that
that's the thing, it's just too good.
Yeah.
And
you can't rationalize your way out of it.
Unless you can afford to do it every day of your life.
Yeah.
And some people do.
But then your life's not going to be very long.
Your life's, I don't know.
I can't imagine that.
Ask Keith.
Yeah. Yes. How is that man still alive? He's just pickled, isn't he?
I don't know. I don't know what he does anymore, but I know what he did.
Yeah. All of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man. What a time.
What a dude. What a great guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now here we are in the 2020s.
Yeah.
And we're doing
so we're over COVID. No one gives a fuck about that anymore.
No, I know.
I see people walking around in masks going, what the fuck's that going to
be? Look, that's a rabbit hole that I went pretty deep down. And
we all did.
Yeah.
We had to. Yeah. We were even encouraged to drive our cars on our own with a mask on.
With a mask. It's great, isn't it? It's just, forget about critical thinking. Yeah. I saw a photo the other day of remember this? And there's these school kids playing the flute with a mask on with a hole in the mask so they can blow on the blowhole. It's like we did it. And the photos of the people hugging their relatives through a plastic sheet. They were on the other side and they were able to hug them through the plastic.
Oh, I know. Nuts.
It just went mental, man. Yeah. It went absolutely mental. And now it's like, oh, no, don't worry about that. Let's just move on. That's just...
Well, I don't think anyone gives a shit anymore.
No. It just didn't pan out the way that we were told it was going to pan out. We were told that you have a very good chance of dying. You're going to die. This is going to kill you. And now it's just the spicy cold. We all realised it was just a little bit more hectic than a cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck, man, what a psyop.
Yeah. Well, I had it once, a bout of it, and it was a bit uncomfortable. It wasn't nice.
Did you get it early on? Or in the middle somewhere?
In the middle somewhere.
I got it twice, and I'll be honest, it kicked my ass. I didn't get vaccinated though.
Oh, didn't you?
No, okay. I didn't do it, but it was bad. Like I was sick.
Yeah, I didn't feel that well, but it wasn't. It just went away after a week or whatever.
Yeah, right.
It was gone.
Yeah. It was about a week for me. Yeah.
But I suppose I shouldn't talk too much there because some people did die and some people got it worse than others. You know, I suppose it just depends who you are and your makeup. And
I think what statistically really came out was when no one was talking about this was the people that died were the people that were really unhealthy, which is the same for the flu. The people that are obese, that have all these other comorbidities, they're the ones that were in trouble, which again, it's the same thing. If you get influenza and you've got all these other comorbidities, you got to be like, so elderly people, an elderly person gets a cold, that's a problem. An elderly person comes the wrong side of a set of stairs and it's a problem, But anyway, so the COVID thing was it was interesting because I did the voice when COVID happened. They almost shut down the whole show. We did the first 2 episodes, and then the lockdowns happened, and there was like months where we were doing nothing, and then they managed to figure out a way to keep the show going, and Kelly Rowland and Boy George were in their home countries and were on a TV screen on the chair.
Really?
And there was no audience. There was fake recordings of an audience cheering. It was so stale, man. It was the weirdest thing. Yeah. And my whole intention of doing that show was like, I'll do the show. I'll show people that I'm not just the guy that was on Home and Away, and that I'm a legitimate musician, and then I'll get on the road and I'll tour and I'll play a bunch of shows. No. There's no touring.
No.
All of that was completely dead.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that really didn't pan out the way that I had planned it to. Yeah. But then Sharon, our wonderful manager and your partner, found me because of what I'd done on The Voice. So it all worked out really well. So that's why I'm singing for you, man. Yeah. We're doing some filthy stuff.
Yeah.
It worked out beautifully.
Of course. Yeah.
It's been if only we could have been doing I could have left the show and gone straight into touring with the Filthies. That would have been amazing because it's perfect.
It's been a great run too, I have to say. And it still is, and it still will be.
It's only growing.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And because I think about how, as you were saying, when you were a young bloke and when things were really, really flying with Dragon, that was what people came out to do, to be entertained. There was no streaming, there was no poker machines, there was barely any TV. This is what you did. Whereas now there are so many other things that are like so much more stimulating that people can do, you know, glued to their phone or go to the movies or do whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
That the live music scene is more for people who that really gets them. Whereas before it was just that's what you did.
It was
even if you weren't
part
that
of the
into
course.
it. Yeah. So for us to be, I often think about how fulfilling it is to get up on stage with great musicians and sing songs that people sing back to me and that know the words. And every time we play a new song, like we play Jump by Van Halen or something, and as soon as that intro starts, everyone's like, oh yeah, and then we play the intro to April Sun and they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, man, imagine being in an original band where these are songs that we've created and everybody knows the words, which is exactly what you were doing.
Well, that's what I still do with Mossy as well. So, you know, you play those songs, those older songs from the Matchbook period, Bow River, and, you know, My Baby, or the Chisel stuff we do, and then, of course, you know, Tucker's Daughter. And,
yes.
You know, Out of the Fire, all those songs, people sing along, and a lot of people. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's why we do it. Is to create joy, but to get that feedback from an audience. You know, there's nothing better than that.
Nah.
There's nothing better than exciting an audience.
And it's so, time kind of stops. I don't know about your experience, but for me, it's like a meditation.
I wish time had stopped for me. I'd probably be younger.
But yeah, for me, it's like a meditation where I'm so present and in the moment.
Yeah, I get that.
And and I guess that's probably why when you're playing your fills, you're not thinking, okay, I'm going to do the 16th snare roll into the, you know, you're just like, nah, this is what needs to happen here.
With me, it's more like, oh, Mark's doing that. Oh yeah, right. I might lead him into this section.
Sure.
You know, that's how I think.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of times when you have to go, guys, we're finishing the song now.
There's that.
I'm going to let you know that we're finishing, okay?
Yeah, the big triplet,
Yeah. There's a fair few. I talked with Lee about this, but one of the fun things about what we're doing, because Lee was talking about with Savage Garden, he had to play exactly the same thing every single time.
Yeah.
And that's what that required. And Randall said the same with Shania Twain. This is what you play.
Yeah.
You do not stray from that at all or you lose your job.
Yeah.
And was that?
I was going to say exactly.
Yeah, exactly, dead on. And whereas what we're doing, which is what's so fun and filthy about the Filthy Animals, is it's looser than that. So, you know, sometimes
it's tight as, but it's loose.
Yeah. The parts that need to be are exactly the way they need to be. But there's moments where it's like, no, Dan's cooking on this solo at the moment. Let him go. You know, or something like that. And every now and then there's a real train wreck. But the fun part is when they don't know that we have completely derailed this thing and then managed to get it back on and then bring it home, and it all is beautiful. And like no one even knows, and we're up on stage like looking at each other going, oh fucking hell.
Yeah. It's all that.
It's all fun, man. Yep. It is a real
this band has certainly been you know, it's exciting. And where we're kind of going is exciting too. Where Sharon's taking it is, you know, I don't know. We don't know where it's going to go, but it's going somewhere. It's certainly got that trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's exciting.
Yeah. The more gigs we play, we're getting more and more times where it's like it's a packed room. Yeah, and people rave about it.
They do. I know, and I often have to go, what is it? It's just a cover band.
Yeah,
but I don't know. It's got ingredients that are a little different. I think the marketing is one of them.
Yeah.
I think the song choices are also another one.
And the execution of those songs that feel good. Like
and the execution,
a lot of these songs are songs that like at that gig we did at Distillery Road, there was this young bloke who came up to me who must have been 10. And he was asking me what my favourite bands are, and we were talking about Chris Cornell, and we were talking about Screaming Jets and a bunch of the songs that we
Isn't
play.
That great?
And he was like, he knew all about it. I was like, do you know who this is? He's like, yeah. He loves it. And that's what's cool, I think, is that the playing those classic party rock songs, it doesn't really matter how old you are. If you are out in public, if you go to the supermarket, you're going to hear April Sun sooner or later. And it doesn't matter that it's an old song. It's still a good song. It's still there's something still special about it. And then to hear it and feel it live.
Actually, it blew me away when they before we went on, that sound guy played April Sun and Cuba. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And it sounded huge.
Yeah, it did.
He had it rocking.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Is that the original band there? Or is that a
redone cover?
A redone with a bigger drum? No, it was the original.
April Sun with subs.
Sounded huge with subs. I know.
Yeah.
And the drummer playing it the correct way.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's one thing that I think is lost on when you hear a recording as opposed to when you go to a gig. One thing that there's something that happens that I think is easy to forget. When you're at a gig, you're rubbing shoulders with other people. There's the energy of strangers and maybe loved ones, and that's exciting. Human beings, we need connection, right? So whenever you're doing that, you are feeling good. That's just what happens. But then it's usually dark. Maybe the floor's a bit sticky. Maybe you've had a few drinks. There's lights going on, and then it's loud, and you can feel that kick drum in your chest, especially if the sound's a good mix. And so there's all these extra things that are added on to the experience of music as opposed to sitting with your headphones on or listening through your phone to just...
absolutely,
and to be facilitating in that and bouncing off that is
it's a whole experience.
I don't think there will ever be a time when humans don't get that. I think there's obviously a lot of us that are, the AI thing, and a lot of young people have got all these other things, but there's still going to be that core group of people that go, you need to know that live music is something really cool.
I hope so. I hope you're right there. I think you are, but you can only hope so because God, it's going so far in another direction.
Yeah, man.
Isn't it? And particularly, like you said, that AI thing, it's frightening.
Yeah.
On many levels.
When there's a day when people watch a band of humanoids, that's when we're dead. That's when we're gone. The actual robots performing the song. I want to see robots fight. Like I'd watch robot UFC for sure, because then they could like rip each other's arms off and stuff, and it could be even more intense.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see him play music, because there are these digital artists apparently where it's not even a person, and they've got an Instagram profile and they've got a face, but it's not real. It's not a person. Nothing about it's real, and they've got loads and loads of followers. Jesus, what's going on, man?
Yeah.
It's
scary.
It is scary.
Yeah.
Should we wrap it up, mate?
I don't mind.
It's been a great chat.
Have you got more?
I think we've covered all the big issues.
Okay. If you're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, man. This has been a really great chat. Thanks. Yeah, man.
Oh, okay.
I love it.
I
Thanks
always
for coming,
wonder,
man.
I always, I'm pretty loose at these things.
No, it's great.
I'm never organised, and
so am I, dude.
Can't remember stuff.
It's just it's just a conversation, man. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you, mate.
Thanks, man.
Been good.
Cheers.
All right. If you're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, man.
All right. How did I look though?
Flawless.
But Sharon will ask me. You know that.
Absolutely flawless.
So did you do your hair?